stories being told.
Hey, welcome back to the Jesus Magnet podcast. I'm your host, Joel. Today we have Richard. How you doing, Richard?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us and, being bold and sharing your story on the Jesus Magnet. I'm very excited to hear it. Laura and myself have been staying with you, Richard, for a little bit as we've broken down in Wellington, and you guys have just been incredible to us. So, yeah, thank you, Richard, for bringing us in and just treating you like family, really. Treating us like family, and yeah, it's such an honor to actually be able to hear where you've come from and what you've done. So yeah, we'll just pass it straight over to you, and you can start wherever you believe your testimony begins. But yeah, who are you? Yeah,
well, it's been a pleasure to have you guys with us, and we've enjoyed having you and getting to know you as you've been here with us. And so I am a businessman. I am married with 4 kids. I guess my background is in the IT, information technology industry. So I've worked with computers almost all my life. So that's been it's been really interesting. Now what I'm doing is less in computers itself, but more in business and investing and company strategy, and doing a bit of consulting and work like that as well. So,
and you and your wonderful wife are heavily involved in church as well. My question is have you always been involved in church? Have you always been a Christian, raised that way, or was that something that came in later on in life?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Christian family. So both my parents were strong Christians, and most of my wider extended family also are Christians. So, every Sunday morning and night I'd be in church with my family right from when I was very, very young. I can remember as a little kid, you get tired at night at church and you just fall asleep on the chairs in the rows in church or under the seats if that's what it takes. But, every week you're there in church. So yeah, that was part of my life.
I love that. I've had heard stories of people coming and saying that, they brought up that way and they would bring a sleeping bag to church as a kid, and they'd just get into that as soon as worship finished at church and get straight into their sleeping bag. I kind of felt a little bit sorry for the pastor, because you're getting all these people preparing to sleep right as he's about to speak.
Yeah, I've been in church before where people have fallen asleep, and the poor pastor has had to try and wake them up.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. All right. So
I guess even from a young age, I was involved in church. I was participating, and I remember, at the age of about 4, I guess, hard to remember exactly back that far, but I do remember one particular evening where I was on a Sunday night. I remember being impacted by what happened in church, coming home, and then sitting on my bed with my mum and just working through that I wanted to be a Christian and give my life to God.
That's so cool. So, and you worked through that with your mum.
Yeah. That's how I remember it. Yeah.
Wow.
And I guess, since then, as you journey and grow through life, you go through different stages of development as a child and as a teenager and into adulthood. And as for me, it's not been just that one single event, but many events and many times where I've come back to that point where I have a recommit and continue to make that decision of, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to live my life. And so it's, although there was that one moment, which I do remember clearly, there's also been many other moments throughout my growing up years and my adult life where you come back around the circle and you're challenged by the circumstances of life and the world around you, and just the fact that you're at a different stage in your life, and you ask yourself the question, is this what I want to be doing? Is this am I living true to what I believe is the right thing to do with my life. And so there's been many moments that I've come back to that, and every time it's been, yes, actually, I do believe this is true. Everything, all of my experiences and everything I know and understand is lines up with what I believe and how I believe life should be lived. And so I guess you're just finding clarity and encouragement in the journey of life as it goes on.
I love that, because I mean, just spending the small amount of time with you, Richard, recently, you're a very deep thinker, you're a very critical thinker. So when you analysed the faith, if you want to call it, of Christ and who he is and what he means in your life, that is not a I believe because my parents believed. It's I believe I own this because this is why it's 100% true. And I love how you've waded through that process, and obviously even from a young age, you thought that way, making sure that you were being really clear on what you saw as truth and following the logic where it leads, not bending anything, and that you finished at the end of the line with Christ.
Yeah, and the journey's not over.
Yeah,
and I'm in my mid-40s now, and hopefully there's a long way to go.
Yeah, come on, yeah, that's it. So, so you obviously continued with a relationship with Christ throughout your younger years, and did you ever have any questions or anything that wavered throughout those years, or had you always been relatively strong in that area?
Yeah, I think in my younger years, like at least up till I left high school, so around 18, I was very consistent and strong. Like I said, my family always went to church, so I was always there. A lot of my friends were those people who were going to church or in those circles as well. And so there wasn't a lot of, I never went off the rails as a teenager or, went with groups of friends that led me astray. I think God was very good to me, and he protected me in those years because, and I guess partially just because of the fact that as a family and as an individual, we made that decision to be in church every weekend. I think that just the simplicity of that in itself just means that you're consistently being in the presence of God and worship. You're being taught the Word of God, God's laws and God's ways from the Bible every week. So you're hearing that. That's kind of filtering through your life consistently, regularly, and so there was never a time in there. I think the bigger questions of life and complexities and the thought processes that I've had that have led me down different avenues of is all this right? Is the Word of God true? Is my experience an accurate portrayal of what I believe it is? All of those bigger questions I think came later in my 20s and 30s, when I actually got faced with more challenges, more difficult challenges, I guess, in life, where you have to make bigger decisions, bigger calls, and that's where you really start. For me, I really started going deep on those questions.
Wow. Because, I just want to ask you something that we spoke about the other day, was how you hear God's voice. Because it was really profound, I think, what you said. I think the listeners will really benefit from that. And I'll just give you where I was going with it so that you can expand on it, was you filtered through, you were diligent in reading the Word at a young age that enabled you to filter through decisions and knowing if it's where God's peace is leading you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, when I was in primary school, at the end of primary school in year 6, so I would have been about 10 years old, the school that I went to had Bible in schools, where a pastor or a senior Christian would come into the school and teach for 1 hour, a class. It doesn't happen so much these days. It's getting sort of phased out of schools, which is unfortunate. But we had this at our school, and it just happened by coincidence that I was there for the first lesson where the teacher came along and he handed out these blank booklets and gave them to all the kids in the class. And he said, well, this is what we're going to do our work in over the next month or so. And then for the next 2 or 3 weeks, because it was just once a week you'd come in, for whatever reason, I wasn't there. I was absent, so maybe I was homesick or I went on a excursion or whatever. I can't remember. But then when I came back at the end, I was there for the last lesson, and so I had this book, and it had my name at the top on the front page, but it was just completely blank and empty. And so I was there for the last lesson. At the end of the lesson, he's like, okay, everyone hand in your booklets, and I'm going to review them, so to speak. I was like, well, I didn't think anything of it at the time, so I handed it in with everyone else. Everyone else had theirs all filled in with what they'd done. Handed it in, and then he came back the next week, and he's like, had a prize for the person who'd done the best. And he said, basically, I want to award you the prize because you were brave in handing in your empty booklet that you hadn't filled in. Which I didn't think anything of at the time, but he obviously had thought, okay, this kid has not done any work, hasn't listened. He probably thought I was a bit of a brat. And but the thing he gave out was a Bible. So he gave me a Bible, and I had Bibles at home because my family's a Christian family, but this was it felt kind of special because it was my very own personal Bible. It wasn't a kid's picture book Bible. It was an actual modern English, Bible like we'd read as adults. So I took that home, and from that day I chose that I would read one chapter at least of that Bible every night before I went to sleep. So
how old are you at this?
I'm like 10 years old.
Okay.
So, year 6, primary school. So that's when I started reading the Bible. I mean, I'd gone to Sunday school and been in church, so I'd heard a lot of the Bible stories, but I actually started reading the Bible for myself and started in the New Testament, and I started at the beginning, Matthew chapter 1. I just read that. It was a New Testament. I've still got it today. And I just read through that whole thing, got to the end of the New Testament, and then I got another Bible, and then I went back to Genesis and started in the Old Testament and read through the whole Old Testament.
Wow.
So within a year or two, I had read the whole Bible. And
this is all around 10, 11, 12?
10, 11, 12 years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so, quite young, and again, I didn't think it was significant or special at the time, but looking back now, it just gave me such a foundational approach to knowing what the Bible said, and just having that basis of going back to, and I think when you're young, you absorb a lot more information a lot more rapidly. Like I read things now, and you take away bullet points, and you have to gloss over parts and that sort of thing when I read articles or whatever. But at that age, like I just absorbed so much. So then later on in my life, people would be like, "Oh, there's this story in the Bible. Oh, yep, I know that one. I read that." Like all those years ago, but it sunk in.
It's one of those things where when you learn something at a young age, like actually learn it, if you ever do you remember learning to ride a bike?
Vaguely. Yeah,
see, I don't, and I just can't, it's imprinted because you did that at a young age. So I'm a big believer that if anybody was to do anything, even reading the Bible, it sticks.
Yeah.
There's this development year where it's almost you're moldable, like more moldable than ever. And we sort of get harder as we age, like cheese.
Yeah. Not always in a good way.
Yeah, and like cheese we get smelly. Okay. Oh, well, that's amazing. So you obviously, that had a profound imprint on you from like 10, 11, 12 years old, reading through the whole Bible. I mean, I've only done that once, and I did that for the first time, I think, 4 years ago, and I'm 28. So that's pretty impressive that you had.
Yeah, and I'd probably hazard a guess that a lot of Christians never actually do.
Yeah,
They
eh?
read part through the popular parts and through parts they enjoy.
Yeah,
but if we knew what percentage actually read through the whole thing, I think we'd be shocked. It's quite low.
Yeah, that's true. So that obviously solidified your faith as a kid. Like you weren't just going to church anymore and listening to the Sunday school stories. You were going to church knowing, okay, I've actually read this data for myself. I've absorbed this. I understand that, in the Old Testament that actually relates to the New Testament. And I mean, because one of the things that I was always lost with was when they said that Jesus died for us. My thinking was, everybody dies.
Right.
Why is this person different? Surely he would die at some point anyway, whether it was on a cross or whether it was from old age, but that part was never explained to me. For you being able to read through the whole Bible, was that an understanding that you probably had grasped a little bit deeper than most 10-year-olds?
Yeah, I think the lessons in Sunday school and those sorts of things, and just being in church, that had been, growing up every year, understanding Easter and having that re-explained. I think that was something that was quite clear. I guess before my teen years, so up until I hit high school, I can only really remember one main experience of actually experiencing God.
Wow.
That would have been, I'm guessing, around the age of 6. I remember my brother and I got this tennis game thing, and we're outside playing on the driveway, and as young kids do, we got into a bit of an argument about it, whose turn it was or that sort of thing, and parents had to come out and tell us that if we couldn't play together, we had to separate. So I was the one who was selected to go inside and let my brother have a turn with the thing, which I was fuming angry about, that the injustice of this. So it was my turn. So I remember I was standing inside the lounge room, and I was looking out the window watching my brother play this game, and I was angry, and I was trying to make sense of it. And I heard what seemed to me at the age of 6, like someone speak from behind me, say, "Do you still love me?" And I turned around, and there was no one there. But it felt like an audible voice to me. And when I turn around, no one's there, and I'm like, oh gosh, that was God. He was challenging me about my anger, and asking if that's going to stop me from loving him. And so that was a really significant moment in my life that I've never forgotten. But it was the first time that I felt like God actually spoke to me or engaged on a personal relationship with me. So that was something that was really special, and that I hold as a moment. But it's the only time ever in my life that I've had that kind of encounter where I actually felt like it was a physical voice. Every other time where I've heard from God, it's been more of a sense in my spirit, or reading of the Bible, and something will, like everyone says, jump out at you, or something in the Bible that you read will capture my heart or my understanding, or will be relevant to something that's going on in my life, or I'll just have that sense of peace about something, that it's the right thing to do or the right way to go. But most of the time I just get this sense in my spirit, but not so much a speaking voice, just a inner knowing and inner understanding.
Wow. I think that's a lot of people have that same sense of being guided by God, and it, to me, when I hear that, it's God's almost like gentlemanness of guiding us, never forcing us to follow Him, but wanting us in our own free will to choose Him and to seek after Him, to seek after that voice. Because if He's yelling at us, it's too easy to hear, and it sometimes wouldn't feel like an actual choice if you felt obligated to. But when you're seeking out that voice in the chaos, that's when God goes, okay, this man is searching for me, and He will find me. So what happened after those later years? So you obviously stayed following Christ throughout your young adult years, and then did you go to uni or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, so when I was in my mid-teens, so sort of 14, 15, 16, that was the next season in my life where I remember significant encounters with God. In the church that I was attending, it was a Holy Spirit-filled church, charismatic Pentecostal style, and many Sunday nights there would be moments in worship where the Holy Spirit would just come, and there'd be just a real sense of God in the building with the people. And I remember there were dozens and dozens of moments across those years that God just met with me, and just there'd be the leaders of the church were sensitive enough to take the time to allow God to do His work, and we just sat in the presence of God, and I remember not so clearly, but just loosely across that season, that just a work in my heart was done, and it wasn't big significant things or God speaking over any particular things. It was just time in His presence. And then I was also attending the youth group, and we had events and camps, youth camps that I'd go to for a weekend away every year or so. And those moments were also really significant, where you'd have that time just to be in the presence of God, and those moments which just for me, I can't quite articulate them in any form that is really understandable. It's it's a spirit to spirit connection that is it's not like anything else that you have in this world, but God really is able to come and meet a person, and actually just His presence changes your heart and your mind and how you think about things, and how you feel about life. You might go into a meeting with certain emotions or feelings or thoughts, and you spend time in the presence of God, and you just feel encouraged and uplifted, and the hard things disappear and become much, much less than what they were. Nothing tangibly changes, but it's a spiritual change.
Yeah, and often it's that spiritual change that affects the physical. So, I mean, like you said earlier, all your decisions were filtered almost through the Word of God. Just in a process of your mind, of you having spent that much time in His presence, spent that much time in His Word, that you were almost directed as you made natural decisions, like, should I get this job, or should I marry this person, or whatever it is. It was these decisions that were filtered through the will, if you would like, of God. Like, this is how my mind now operates. And I like what you said the other day. You sought His peace in decisions. So if something seemed a little bit off, you didn't go there.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a few examples, like in my after high school, I did tertiary study, and I was really quite focused on working diligently as well as studying so that I could not have any student loan. So every time we had holidays, I would really eagerly and strongly seek working opportunities to make sure I could earn money, so pay for the next year's fees and hopefully come out at the end debt-free. There was this one Christmas holidays, obviously, in tertiary study you get, it's ridiculous, you get months off. You finish at the end of October and it starts again in February, so you got a good amount of time. So
it's a lot of time, yeah.
So I'm looking for a job, and I'd been looking in the sort of the month leading up to the end of the semester, and trying to find work, line something up so I had something to jump straight into. Nothing was coming my way. It just seemed really difficult that particular year. So it got to the end of the semester ended, then spent the first week searching for a job, asking around, looking for what was around. Nothing was coming up. Second week passed, and I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I just have to grab the bull by the horns and just find something. So went and got a newspaper back in those days. The internet was just emerging, and so job opportunities were in newspapers, not on the internet. And I looked through the classified listings for job ads, and found an ad, called up the number. I don't even remember exactly what the role was, but called up the number, talked to the guy, said, hey, really keen, want a job, can I come in? They semi-interviewed me on the phone, and they're like, yep, come in, we'll give you the job, it'll be great. And so I hung up the phone, and I was really excited. I had sort of secured employment for a few months, and instantly I just had this sense in my heart that that's not the right thing to do. Not to pursue that. Don't go to that meeting. Don't take that opportunity. And it was strange, and I wrestled with it for probably half an hour to an hour, back and forth. This is weird. Why would it not be the right thing to do? Nothing else has come up. In your mind, you're going through trying to make logic of all this, the scenario that's unfolding. But
am I just panicking because I haven't met these people? All of these sort of natural things, but it was obviously more than that.
Yeah, and so I couldn't shake it. There was this disquiet inside of me that was like, this is not the right thing. So after wrestling with it for a while, I chose to accept it and say, hey, God's obviously showing me his path, his way, and I don't understand it. But so I called the guy back again. And I said, hey, spoke to you before. Sorry, I can't come in. It's not going to happen. Thanks for the opportunity, but I can't take it. And then I thought, okay, well that's great. Now it's on God. Let's see what he provides. And a few days go by and nothing. And I was like, okay, this is not cool. I was getting into the third week, I think, of not doing anything. And then a couple of days later, I got a phone call from a guy that I knew, a friend, and he said, oh, hey, you still looking for a job? I've got an opportunity to come up. And it was an office job, not too far away from where I lived. Fixed term for the holidays, full time,
sweet
desk work, clean, tidy, not labouring. I tried the previous year to do bricklaying.
That's pretty hard work.
I lasted 2 days, and I had to say to my boss, my body can't handle this. I was going to break my back.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. So God provided the opportunity, and it was one of the best jobs I've had because it paid really well. It was just solid work, smashed it out, and I learned a bunch of things there too. So just it's a small example and a silly thing, but it was just an example of God prompting in my heart that when I started to walk down a path that he didn't want me to pursue, then he gave me that lack of peace, that disquiet in my heart. And I was sensitive enough and I guess bold enough and courageous to be obedient and follow that, and then be able to actually sit in alignment with the peace of God. The Bible says that His Holy Spirit is with us, and when we turn to the left or the right, then He'll bring us back to where He wants us. And I think that's how He works. That we live our lives. We do have to take opportunities and put ourselves out there. But then when we start moving into something that's not right, then that's when He corrects us. And but we have to be sensitive to allow that.
Yeah, I love that, Richard. Really, really cool. One of the things that kind of springs to my mind when talking about the peace and the presence of God, as we pursue that, going to the scriptures is when Moses is leading the people, and there's one point where God says, if you go this way, you'll be fine, you'll win the wars, all this stuff, but my presence will not be there. And He said, but if you go this way, it's going to be tougher, but my presence will be there. And essentially saying, like, I'll go with you and I'll help you along the way, either way, but one, you're going to notice my presence, and the other one, you be lack of. And He chose, I will follow your presence, I'll follow that peace. And I love that, because like even as we're going through, it's not listening to necessarily what's best for us, but it's what God's will for us is, which almost always aligns with what's best for us eternally. And that gives that real dependency on God. I love the word, Scripture talks about crying out, Abba, Father. And Abba is, the original meaning is father, but if you go back even further, it's more of an infant, Dada. And
Right.
It shows the dependency when we cry out, Abba, Father. It's as a infant cries for their parents in that dependency. I can't do anything without you. Help me. And I love how you just pursued that peace in all those decisions, like, and if the red light came on, the stop, I don't want you going there. You wrestled with it, but and then you said a couple of times outside of this podcast, sometimes it's you've gone the other way and not listened to that peace, and it's cost you. And God's like trying to do life with us, going like, please listen, but you've got free will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He doesn't bully us. He allows us to make the choice.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. What happened next after that, Richard?
I guess, there's been other experiences that I've had of God. Another thing that I remember in my early 20s, I had an experience where I was awoken with a dream in the night, and it was I don't even remember the content of the dream very clearly at all, but I remember the sense of the words. It's not fear, but it's just like intense caution around. The dream made me feel this. It was in regards to a car. There was a car in the dream, and something to do with I don't know, an accident or a dangerous situation. And I woke up with the sense inside of myself that there was this extreme caution required. And usually you have a dream, you're like, oh, that's a weird dream, whatever, and you get up and move on with your day, and you forget about it, or or maybe you remember it, but it doesn't grip you. But this particular case, it just really gripped me, and that whole next day, I had the sense of caution, and I regret to say that in those sort of years, I was I enjoyed driving cars fast, and I was slightly reckless. I did at that time have a few speeding fines and different things against my name, which I'm not proud of, but that was my style of driving at the time. It was not too safe and not too sensible. But anyway, it was a Saturday, and after I had the dream on Friday night, and on Saturday the whole day I just had this sense of caution around me. So then I went out on Saturday night with some friends, went out and did some things. But when I went to drive my car, I was just gripped with the sense, I have to be really careful. And so I was driving slow. I was being really cautious, and went out and did some stuff. And then on my way home, I was coming home down towards the area where I lived, and there's this long straight road, and usually I gun it down there. It was I have got speeding fines on that particular road, and they were very expensive. So usually I go fast down the road, but on this particular day, I just felt like, oh man, I've got to be really careful. So I was driving really slow.
And this is all because of that dream?
All because of that dream, that sense in my heart, and that I couldn't shake that whole day, that, oh my gosh, this caution needed. And I come down to it's a T intersection at the end of the road. I come down where I'd usually be traveling really fast, come up to it, went to put my brakes on, nothing happened. And so my foot's down on the floor.
The brakes failed.
Brakes not working at all.
Whoa.
And I go straight through the T intersection, managed to pull my handbrake lever up and skid into the middle of the T intersection, and just fortunately there were no other cars coming left or right at that particular time, because I would have got slammed right into, or if I had been going faster I would have been going straight through into the house straight in front of the T intersection. And so I thought, oh, that's so weird,
Wow.
I really believe that was the provision of God, just giving me that dream purposefully to give me that sense of caution, so that I would be careful that particular time.
Wow.
And he was just, protecting me.
Yeah.
Obviously there's no evidence or I can't prove anything, but, in my heart and in my mind, I know that, if it hadn't been for that dream that previous night, then that would have been a very significant event for me.
Wow. That's amazing. I love how God can still speak to us through dreams. It's one of those, you hear it all over the world, actually. God intervening in people's lives through their dreams. I actually heard that there's heaps of like Muslim people and people in India that are having these dreams of Jesus, and I just love how he speaks to people in a way that they're going to understand, they're going to be able to receive him.
Yeah.
And he speaks to people to be able to protect them, and shows he obviously wasn't in that dream.
Yeah, and it didn't even seem like a spiritual dream.
Yeah.
Like, didn't have any of that sort of underlying tone or feel, or, it was just a weird dream that you'd have on any day after eating cheesy pizza. And, and but it left me with something that whole next day that I couldn't shake. So there was something in it that, God was doing.
That's really cool. Really cool. So that was you would have been studying.
Early 20s studying, yep.
Yep. Okay. So what's next in the life of Richard?
Well, another similar example, I guess, of God's watching over me. So I was in my first year of studying, and one of the papers I was doing was a mathematical paper, and I was really great at maths all through high school. I did maths, stats, calc, physics. That was my jam. Chemistry, no thanks. Biology, no thanks. But maths was my jam. So I went to do my tertiary study, and one of the first year papers is this maths paper, and I did throughout the whole semester and everything. I did reasonably well. It was it was a good paper. I enjoyed it. and enjoyed learning about the stuff, and got reasonably good grades with all the assessments along the way. And it came up to a mid-year, because the paper would run for just the first half of the year, and then you do different papers in the second half. So the end of course exam was in the middle of the year for that paper, and all your papers that you'd done that semester. So I sat all my other exams, and the maths was the last one. And just before a day or two before that exam, I just came down really, really sick. Like really fluey. Like I couldn't even stand up and walk. I was that sick. And so I went to the doctor, and they said, "Oh, you just got to go home and rest." And you got, they gave me a certificate of have a week or two off to recover from this, what seemed like a really strong flu, nothing like I'd ever had before. But it meant that I couldn't sit the exam for that maths paper, and what ended up happening was that the results. So because I couldn't sit the exam, what they did is they did a compassionate course mark. So they took all my assessments during the semester and gave me a result for if I had have sat the exam, what I would have got. But the exam in that particular year was so much harder than any other year that 70% of the whole student body failed that exam.
Seriously?
So most people the following year had to go back and repeat that paper again, because for whatever reason in that particular year the exam was so hard that most people didn't pass. And even though I was really good at it, and had good assessment marks all through, I was granted a pass mark. But if I had sat it, I'm confident that just like all my peers, I possibly would have failed it as well, and then had to repeat the year again.
Wow.
It felt weird and strange and unusual at the time, but again, I feel like if I had have had to go back and repeat things, it would have stunted my whole academic progress, and could have caused things to be very different. But I feel, again, it's just a little thing that through sickness God allowed me to be protected from what was potentially something that would have hindered my progress through those years.
Come on, yeah. I love the Bible says, God can use all things for good for those who love him.
Yeah.
And he takes everything, takes a sickness and turns it into a blessing. That's just amazing. It's cool how God, throughout your life, Richard, he's just done all these little things around you and for you. Not like anything that's, I don't know, like the sky opening up or anything like that. But you can just see he's protected you, and he's helped you through and allowed you to, molded you and all that sort of thing. But it's all been very subtle, and he's never imposed on you.
Yeah. I think my story, my testimony is not one, like you say, of dramatic sudden events, which some people has, and that's fantastic. But my story is one of the faithfulness and the consistency of God to always be there. The Bible says that he will never leave us. Well, I've gone through ups and downs throughout my life, but he's always been faithful and consistent. And whenever I've been in need, he's been there. Whenever I've had great times and been on a high, he's been there too. And he's always watched and overshadowed me. And I think, sometimes we feel like God is not present, but I think that when we look back on our lives, it's only when you look back and see what's happened that you actually realize how present God was. In each particular day, there might not be a strong sense of God is here right now, but when I look back at yesterday and last week and last year and 10 years ago, I can see, God was there then, God was there then, God was there then. He's never left.
Yeah, come on. Richard, did you want to share a little bit about your journey going into the hospital.
Yeah,
years
sure.
ago.
Yeah, well, that was a lot later. Obviously, from my early 20s through my mid 20s, I got married. We had some kids, and then when I was in my early 30s, I had an incident which got me very sick. When I say an incident, what happened is I got up in the morning. I was feeling fine. I get up, have breakfast, go to the office, and over the first couple of hours of the day, I start to feel a pain in my leg, which was just a weird pain that I hadn't felt before. And obviously, like anything, when it first starts, you're just like, oh, I'll just keep plowing through, and it'll go away. Yeah. But I guess by about sort of 10:30, 11 o'clock, it was so strong and so unusual that it was I was starting to feel nauseous as well, and the people around me in my office were like, "Oh, you don't look very well. You should go see a doctor." So I thought, okay, I'll take that advice. So I went in, visited my GP, and they gave me a check over and basically said, we don't know why you're feeling unwell. We can't see any signs of anything. What you should do is you should go home, go to bed and rest, and if it gets worse, then go to A&E. So I thought, okay, I'll try that. So I didn't have a car that day, so I had to jump on the bus. But this was about by lunchtime by this stage.
Best to not use the car with no brakes anyway. Although this was years after.
This was years later, yeah. I jump on the bus and I'm travelling on the bus back to my suburb where I live, and I'm just feeling so nauseous and so sick that I feel like I'm going to pass out on the bus. And I almost passed out and got to my stop, got out, and feeling rotten as, managed to get home, and then go to bed with I got myself a bucket or a bowl or something just in case I was going to be sick, because I was feeling like I was. Try to go to sleep and rest it off, but over the next 2 hours just get worse and worse and just feel horrible. So I thought, okay, well, GP said if it gets worse, go to A&E. So it's mid-afternoon. I about maybe 2:30. I called my wife and said, "Hey, I'm homesick. I'm not feeling well. I think you need to come and pick me up and take me to A&E because I'm not feeling good." And so she's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll come and grab you." And then so I wait and I wait and I wait, and over an hour passes, and so I call her back. I'm like, "Are you coming to get me?" And she's like, "Oh, I forgot. Yeah, all right, I'll be right there." So then she drives, half an hour to get back and pick me up. And by that time, it's like after 4 o'clock. And I'm just sitting at the front door. I've got like a couple of jackets on. She said when she saw me, I was just grey. My face was grey. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is not good." So she puts me in the car, and she's driving, takes me to the hospital, and we get to A&E. And usually in A&E, you get in there, and they take your name and your details, and they say, "Hey, you sit in the seat," and you literally wait for hours. 6 hours sometimes is pretty standard. But she wheels me in the wheelchair into A&E. The person at the front desk looks at me and goes, "You're going straight through," which never happens.
No paperwork, just straight in.
You're going straight in. You're seeing someone straight away. So I knew, we knew at that point, okay, this is something serious. So, and at that stage, what I'm feeling in my body is like I'm feeling really nauseous, really sick, and I've got this pain in my leg which I can't explain, in my thigh. So they over the preceding evening and through to the next morning, they're doing tests, taking samples, poking, prodding, doing all their doctory stuff. Then the next morning they're like, okay, we're going to give you an MRI. So they gave me an MRI, CAT scan, another MRI. And then after all that, after waiting a couple of hours for them to do their thing, a senior doctor comes in, introduces himself, and he's with another doctor next to him. He says, I'm Dr. blah, blah, blah. I'm going to, we think we know what you've got. I'm going to do surgery on you and cut you up and make a mess. And this doctor next to me is the plastic surgeon, and she's going to try and fix you up afterwards. Here's a form that you need to sign. It's a disclaimer, a waiver. It says that we're going to do our operation, and when you come out of it, you might not have arms or you might not have legs. We don't know. And we're just going to do our best to keep you in one piece as much as we can. We think what you've got is a flesh-eating bacteria that's eating away at you from the inside out. So obviously that's like really shocking, and was...
Yeah, how did you process that news of I might not have arms or legs and the next time I wake up?
Yeah, I guess for me, I was feeling so rotten that I needed something to happen, and I had faith and trust that doctors were going to do their best to fix what was wrong, and underlying all of that, I had a peace in my heart that, you know, God was on my side, and that more than this being a physical thing, a physical impairment or ailment, that there was a spiritual battle going on. And so I felt at peace. So I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried. I mean, it was a bit different from my wife, who was seeing all this happen so quickly in front of her, and you know, the idea that, you know, I might pass away, or I might be, you know, in a wheelchair, or, you know, whatever afterwards, or like, you know, that really freaked her out. But as for me, and in my heart, I had a peace. I wasn't concerned. I wasn't worried. And you know, they, as soon as I signed that form, straight away they wheeled my bed into the surgery room, and then I was gassed out, and they were doing their thing. So there was not a lot of time to process. There wasn't time to think about the pros and cons and do an analysis on anything. It was just, this is happening.
I'm either going to die, or I need to go down and trust these people. Like, there's no, I mean, I suppose from just essentially compartmentalization, you know, like, it's either this is what has to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a maybe or anything like that. It's, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. I'm going to trust in the Lord. I'm going to trust that these doctors are doing everything that they can for me. And that's awesome that you had peace, though, throughout all of that.
And like, so another doctor at a different time came in, and he's like, because it's a kind of a rare condition, not that common. So he's like, oh, this is really serious. He's like, you know, people die from this, eh? Like, probably not the best thing to tell a patient.
Super comforting.
But, yeah. And later on, another medical staff person came in. Once I'd gotten through a bit of it and it was looking a bit more positive, another medical staff came in and said, it is a very serious condition. You know, 50% of people who get it lose an arm or a leg, or 2 legs, or, you know, lose a limb or something off their body. 25% of people die, and there's only, you know, 25% of people who actually manage to overcome it and walk away without anything.
Like in one piece.
And still as a whole person.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how serious, and it just it works so fast that unless you identify it within a couple of days and get straight onto it, then it's just it's all over very
Wow.
quickly. Yeah, so couldn't identify how I picked it up or how I got it, but the surgeon was very good and did a really great job and managed to get on top of it.
Yeah, for those listening, if you haven't seen Richard, I'm looking at him right now and it looks like he has all of his limbs.
Yeah, they did have to take away a section of skin and material from on one of my legs, from my knee down to my ankle. So luckily it hasn't impeded my ability to function normally and continue living life. I've got a slight limp because of the skin graft and things that they did, but it's really miraculous that I still have all my working body parts.
Wow, I mean that's amazing. Did you said earlier that it was really yes, there was a lot of physical parts to it, but you said there was a spiritual battle as well. Would you be able to go into more detail about that?
Yeah, I guess in those early stages, like I said, I had a peace, and I wasn't worried and concerned. And over the course of the first week, 10 days, I think I had 5 surgeries. So the first one, they managed to get most of it out, and then they took me back for a few more to check that it wasn't still in there and progressing, and then I had more to do, skin grafts and different things, to recovery type operations. But I remember being on some pretty significant medications, and coming out of the first one, when I woke up, I was in ICU because in addition to having the surgery, while I was there, my lung had collapsed and I had contracted pneumonia. So they put me in ICU and they'd put tubes down my throat, and if you've ever been into an ICU room, they're quite intensive care units. So the rooms are like they're all kitted out and there's stuff everywhere, and they so I remember coming to and feeling this tube down my throat, which feels so unnatural. So I just grab it and start yanking on it to pull it out. And the nurse, who's very close by, comes over very quickly and is like trying to calm me down and make sure I don't ruin anything or do anything dangerous.
Can you imagine how? I mean, I'm just thinking of like a worse case scenario for this story. If you had lost your arms and you had went to go yank all those cables out,
oh man, that would be horrible.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that would have been even more of a shock than just choking on.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, but you hadn't lost your arms yet.
I hadn't.
You kept your arms.
And so then I think it was because I was in a lot of pain because they'd obviously cut me up a bit, and I had a bit of pain, so they were putting me on painkiller drugs, and I remember having some experiences which have, as a person who's never taken any drugs or any recreational type drugs, I can only guess, but it felt a little bit like I was tripping out. But then at the same time as that was happening, I also had these really deep spiritual experiences where, and again, because they're spiritual in nature and not physical, they're really hard to describe. But basically, on one instance, I felt like I was taken out of my body and out of the room, and God took me in the spirit to places and showed me scenes and scenarios and groups of people, and it's like he was saying, look at the world, look at the way it is, look at all these people who are so broken, and they're doing all these different things to try and there was no words involved. It was just this, like, these visuals and the sense of that God was trying to give me an understanding of the fullness of the way things are, and his broken heart for people. And so
So was it showing you people that were broken?
yeah, not people that I knew, not individuals. It was
And that they're just trying to satisfy themselves and things
just
that
like
can't.
just doing things that people do in this world to try and alleviate their lack of knowledge of God. So there was that one encounter which then obviously it stuck with me, and God's done that for a reason, to try and impress upon me maybe a way that I can help or do something, or an understanding of who He is. Another one at the same time, a different incident. I was in a hospital room, and it was at night time, in the middle of the night. So there's nurses around. There's not many people. But I remember waking up, and it was dark or dimly lit, and I had the sense that there was an angel sitting on the visiting chair in my room, and it appeared to me in the spirit, and it wasn't I was looking with my eyes and this is what I saw. It was like in the spirit, I got this perception that it was the angel of death, the Grim Reaper, as we'd all in the cartoons, with the sickle and the hood over the face, sort of thing, sitting in the chair. And the sense I got from that experience was, this is a serious sickness you've got. This could go either way. You could live or you could die. And there's the angel of death is here and in the room. And the door was shut, and the physical door in the room was shut. And in the hallway, again, I saw in the spirit, demons rushing up and down the corridors of the hospital outside my room, wanting to get in and that they were horrible, nasty demons, as opposed to the angel of death, which was not a nasty creature. And they're rushing up and down, and they couldn't get in my room. My door was closed, and the angel of death was standing guard, so to speak, and they had no permission to get in there. And it obviously I've thought about this and tried to understand it a lot, but the Bible talks about the angel of death being an angel of the Lord, and that even though the Bible says that the Lord gives life and He takes it away, He's the one who's in control, and there was a peace about the angel of death sitting in that chair in my room. He would do whatever he was instructed to do, but it was not like the demons outside, which seemed like vicious and nasty, like pit bull dogs that would just rush around and grab and destroy whatever they could.
Wow.
And so I got a real understanding of spiritual things through that experience, that ever since then I've viewed hospitals very differently, that they're actually places of vigorous spiritual activity. That the battle between life and death is so poignant there, and there's spiritual entities at work in those rooms and those corridors.
Wow, that's amazing, Richard. I've never really viewed a hospital in that light of, it makes sense that there's a huge spiritual battle going on for people, either fighting for their life, with prayer and intercession. And then also, I love how you saw the angel of death that was there, but it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, when you first said that, I was like, oh, he would be tormenting you or something like that. That's from my mind, especially when you said the Grim Reaper. But how you saw that it was under the control and the command of God, and it's there almost as guard for you. It's absolutely amazing. So your recovery on all that was over the last, 4 years, was it?
That was 9 years ago.
9 years ago.
Yeah, so a long time. And I went through several months of recovery and getting back my physical movement and getting back to work. But one of the key changes that changed in me was an understanding about who I was and my place in my responsibilities. I'd started a business and I was working hard at it, and I guess I had this attitude. Looking back now, I can see I had this attitude that if I don't do these things, then no one else can do them. I'm busy. I've got this. I'm working hard. I'm doing these activities, and it's all on me. But in half a day, I went from healthy to very sick, and and a few days later, I'm incapacitated, and out for a couple of months. And God really taught me through that experience that it's more important to Him that we have a heart towards Him and what He's doing and our relationship with Him, than to be focused on working hard and doing things, even if those things are things that He's called us to do. Because I really feel, that starting a business and doing that was a calling that He gave me, and I was following His purpose by doing it. But I'd got the balance wrong. I'd got the priorities out of order. That I was putting all of my time and all of my effort and everything into doing these things and working hard and making sure I did my best. But at the neglect possibly of having a good balance on home, family life, of being a balanced person and having a healthy lifestyle, of actually having a good relationship with God, spending time with Him. And so I think that the one takeaway thing out of all of that experience is God is willing to come to us, and He's willing to break down and take away anything and everything in our lives if it means He can get to us and have relationship with us. He loves and cares about us so much that He's willing to enable or to allow all of the things that we think are important in our lives to be removed, so that we can open up our hearts again to Him. And I would never say that I had walked away from God, or I had left a relationship with God. I just had an out of balance perspective. I was starting to think I was important. I was starting to think that no one else could do the things that I was doing. I was starting to think that those things were important, but family life and other things were less important. But God managed to really shake me through that experience and say, hey, no, your relationship with me, that is the thing that I want. Out of everything that you have, what I want from you is a wholesome, important relationship where we focus on God and we enjoy the experience with Him.
I love that, Richard. Really, really cool. The one thing, because God owns everything, all the universe, the one thing that He wants from us, that He will never force from us, is our heart for Him. And that's something that has to be freely given. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Jesus Magnet. You've got a powerful, powerful story, And if you enjoyed this episode, obviously stay with us for more. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Jesus Magnet Podcast. If you enjoyed this, make sure that you connect with us. Find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and if you want to support us, be a member of our coffee club, Jesus Magnet Coffee Club. See you next time on the Jesus Magnet.